Have you ever noticed the exhaustion in the eyes of those who are forever trying to be good? That peculiar fatigue that comes not from physical exertion, but from the constant internal division between what they truly feel and what they believe they should feel. There is a particular kind of suffering reserved for those who have dedicated their lives to the pursuit of goodness. A suffering rarely acknowledged because it seems almost sacrilegious to suggest that being good could possibly have a dark side. And yet, this suffering is epidemic in our world. Look around you. How many people do you know who have shackled themselves to an ideal of goodness that has become their prison? The mother who believes that to be good means to always put her children before herself until she disappears completely. The spiritual seeker who tries to banish all anger, all darkness, all so-called negative emotions, only to find them emerging in twisted, unconscious ways. The humanitarian who burns out, trying to save everyone, except himself. I remember a woman who came to me, a respected therapist who had spent decades helping others process their pain. She sat before me, her posture perfect, her smile gentle, her words carefully chosen. And yet her eyes revealed a desolation that her words would not acknowledge. "I've spent my entire life being good," she finally confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've followed every moral precept. I've helped thousands of people. I've never allowed myself to be selfish or unkind. And now I feel nothing. I feel like an empty vessel, performing goodness without knowing why anymore." In that moment of raw honesty, she touched upon a truth that few have the courage to face. There is a profound danger in the very concept of being good, when it becomes separated from the authenticity of your being. Nearly 400 years ago in feudal Japan, there lived a man who understood this danger with extraordinary clarity. Miyamoto Musashi, often remembered simply as history's greatest swordsman, was much more than a master of combat. He was a philosopher whose insights cut through the illusions that most of us live by, particularly the illusion that conforming to external standards of goodness leads to a life of meaning and fulfillment. What makes Musashi's perspective so powerful is that it emerged not from abstract theorizing, but from the immediate reality of life and death encounters. When facing an opponent with a sword, there is no room for the luxury of self-deception. You cannot afford to be divided against yourself, thinking one thing while feeling another. The slightest internal division means death. This fierce commitment to truth rather than goodness is reflected in Musashi's famous words. The way of the warrior is resolute acceptance of death. Not because he glorified death, but because he recognized that only by fully accepting the reality of death, not the idea of it, but its concrete immediate possibility, could one be truly free from the fear that makes us cling to comforting illusions, including the illusion of our own goodness. What most people fail to understand about Musashi is that his approach to swordsmanship was not ultimately about defeating others, it was about transcending the divided self. The greatest enemy is not the opponent standing before you, but the internal fragmentation that prevents you from being fully present, fully responsive to what is. And nothing creates more internal fragmentation than trying to conform to an image of goodness that does not arise naturally from your being. Society has taught us to equate goodness with self-sacrifice, with the denial of our own needs, with the suppression of certain emotions labeled as negative or selfish. We have been conditioned to believe that to be good means to be perpetually kind, forever patient, always putting others first, regardless of what we actually feel in any given moment. This creates the fundamental division that Musashi recognized as fatal, the split between what we truly are and what we think we should be. Consider one of Musashi's most profound precepts from his Dokodo, the way of walking alone, written in his final days. Do not, under any circumstances, depend on a partial feeling. This single line contains a revolution in understanding. Most of our notions of goodness depend precisely on partial feelings, elevating certain emotions like compassion and patience while rejecting others like anger and desire. We fragment ourselves in the name of morality. But Musashi recognized that true power, true effectiveness, comes from wholeness, from the capacity to contain all of your feelings without being limited by any of them. This is not a rejection of morality, but a transcendence of the simplistic, dualistic understanding of good versus bad that creates internal war rather than authentic virtue. I want to pause for a moment and ask something that touches the heart of this conversation. When did you first notice the exhaustion that comes from trying to be good according to standards that weren't truly your own? That moment when you realized that much of what you called your moral compass was actually a collection of shoulds and oughts that you had absorbed from parents, religion, society, rather than values that emerged organically from your deepest understanding. I receive messages daily from people carrying the weight of an exhausting goodness, a goodness that doesn't nourish or expand them, but depletes and contracts them, a goodness that has become a performance rather than an authentic expression. They speak of the constant internal monitoring, the self-criticism when they fail to live up to impossible standards, the growing resentment they cannot acknowledge because good people don't feel resentful. If this resonates with something true in you, share in the comments. I began to question my understanding of goodness when I realized that your honesty might be precisely the permission someone else needs to examine their own relationship with being good. Each genuine comment creates a space of authentic inquiry that can benefit all of us. We're not here to arrive at easy answers, but to question deeply together. Now, let's continue exploring what Musashi's relentless wisdom can teach us about transcending the dangerous trap of goodness without substance. What makes Musashi's approach so revolutionary is his fundamental insight that true effectiveness, whether in combat or in life, comes not from conforming to external ideals of what is good or right, but from responding to reality exactly as it is, from a place of internal unification rather than division. In the Book of Five Rings, he writes, "The way is in training, not in trying to be good, not in adhering to moral precepts, but in the direct, unmediated engagement with reality through practice." This is a radical departure from how most of us approach ethics and morality, as a set of rules to be followed, rather than a capacity to be developed through direct experience. The greatest irony in our pursuit of goodness is that it often makes us less capable of actually doing good in the world. When we are divided against ourselves, thinking one thing, feeling another, doing a third, we become ineffective, conflicted, paralyzed. Our actions lack power because they do not come from our totality. Musashi understood that the most effective action comes from a unified being, where there is no gap between perception and response, between understanding and embodiment. This is why he emphasized the integration of mind, body, and spirit in his approach to swordsmanship. It wasn't just a physical technique, but a way of being that eliminated internal division. Look at the paradoxical nature of conventional goodness. The harder we try to be good, the more we reinforce the very sense of separation that prevents genuine goodness from emerging naturally. When you are trying to be patient rather than simply being patient, you have created an internal split. The one who is impatient and the one who is trying to control the impatience. This split itself becomes the source of suffering and ineffectiveness. Musashi would say that this divided state is more dangerous than the initial impatience, because at least the impatience was honest, while the division creates a blind spot that can be fatal in combat or in life. In his precept, "Accept everything just the way it is," Musashi offers us the beginning of a different approach. This is not passive resignation, but radical honesty about what is. Before you can respond effectively to any situation, you must first see it clearly, without the distortion of how you think it should be. The same applies to yourself. Before you can act from genuine goodness rather than the performance of goodness, you must first accept yourself exactly as you are, including all the aspects that don't fit your idealized image. This acceptance isn't the end point. It's the necessary beginning of authentic transformation. Without it, you're simply layering new facades over unacknowledged truths, creating more internal division, not less. The modern obsession with being a good person often overlooks this fundamental truth. Goodness that is not an expression of your authentic being is not goodness at all. It is performance, compliance, self-deception, and eventually, it exacts a terrible price. The price is not just your own vitality and authenticity, though these are indeed sacrificed. The deeper price is that your capacity to actually serve life, to respond to suffering with effectiveness rather than just sympathy, is compromised. You become like a sword that looks perfect but has no edge, aesthetically pleasing but functionally useless. Musashi offers an alternative vision. Develop yourself as an instrument of absolute precision and integrity. not by conforming to external standards of goodness, but by removing every internal obstacle to your complete presence and responsiveness. This is why he lived with such austerity, not as a form of self-denial, but as the natural expression of a being who had recognized what was essential and what was merely distraction. He did not avoid comfort because he thought comfort was bad, but because he had found something more valuable than comfort. The utterly clarified awareness that comes when you stop negotiating with reality and simply meet it directly, without preconceptions. This clarity is what allowed Musashi to remain undefeated in over 60 duels. Not superior technique alone, but the absence of internal division that plagues most fighters and most people in everyday life. While his opponents were caught in the gap between thought and action, between intention and execution, Musashi moved as one unified being. There was no separation between the seer and the seen, the doer and the deed. This state, which the Zen tradition calls no mind, is not a mystical achievement, but the natural condition of a being who has seen through the illusion of the separate self that needs to prove its goodness. There is a story about Musashi that illuminates this point. Before a duel with a famous opponent, the opponent tried to provoke Musashi by calling him dishonorable and immoral. Musashi reportedly smiled and replied, "There is nothing honorable or dishonorable in combat. There is only that which is effective and that which is not." This was not a rejection of ethics, but a transcendence of a dualistic understanding of good and bad that creates internal conflict. Musashi's concern was not with appearing good or honorable in the eyes of others, but with being completely unified in himself. Because this unity, this integration, is the source of both effectiveness and authentic virtue. The quality of attention Musashi brought to swordsmanship is precisely what is missing from most of our attempts to be good. We are so concerned with the outcome, with being seen as good, with validating our self-image as good people, that we miss the actual reality of the situation before us. True goodness, if we even want to use that loaded term, emerges from seeing clearly, from responding to what is actually needed rather than what we think should be needed, based on our preconceptions. And this clarity of seeing is only possible when we are not divided against ourselves, when we are not trying to suppress parts of our experience to maintain an image of goodness. In the Dokudo, Musashi also advises, "Do not seek pleasure for its own sake." At first glance, this might seem like conventional moral advice about avoiding hedonism. But Musashi's point goes much deeper. The pursuit of pleasure for its own sake is ultimately unsatisfying, not because pleasure is bad, but because it is partial. When you chase after certain experiences while avoiding others, you fragment yourself. True fulfillment comes not from having only pleasant experiences, but from being able to be completely present with whatever experience arises, pleasant or unpleasant, comfortable or uncomfortable. This completeness of presence, this refusal to reject any part of experience, is the foundation of both Musashi's effectiveness in combat and his profound serenity. The same principle applies to our notions of goodness. When we pursue certain emotional states, like compassion, patience, or kindness, while rejecting others like anger, grief, or desire, we create an internal division that becomes the source of both suffering and ineffectiveness. The true warrior, in Musashi's understanding, is not one who has no fear, but one who can be completely present with fear without being defined or limited by it. The truly good person, by extension, is not one who experiences only positive emotions, but one who can hold the full spectrum of human feeling without being fragmented by it. This capacity to contain apparent opposites without division is at the heart of Musashi's approach. In his 5 rings, he speaks of the importance of knowing both the surface and the interior of things, of understanding both the large and the small. This is not just tactical advice for combat, but a philosophical orientation toward existence itself. The divided self knows only partiality. It clings to one side of any polarity while rejecting the other. The integrated being that Musashi exemplified can hold seeming contradictions without being torn apart by them. Consider how this applies to our conventional understanding of goodness. We have been taught that being good means always being kind, never being angry, always being generous, never being selfish, always being humble, never being proud. But this creates an impossible fragmentation. The integrated being understands that True kindness sometimes requires the energy of anger to protect what is valuable. That genuine generosity must be rooted in healthy self-regard. That authentic humility includes a clear recognition of one's genuine capacities. It is not about choosing one side of these polarities, but about transcending the very division between them. The dangerous price of conventional goodness is that it keeps us perpetually divided against ourselves, and thus perpetually ineffective, perpetually exhausted, perpetually inauthentic. The alternative is not to abandon ethics or to embrace moral nihilism, but to recognize that true goodness does not come from following rules or conforming to standards. It comes from the clarity that emerges when we stop fighting with reality, both the reality outside us and the reality of our own nature. This clarity allows us to respond to what is actually needed in any situation, rather than what we think should be needed based on our preconceptions. Musashi's relentless wisdom challenges us to let go of our attachment to being seen as good, to being able to validate ourselves through our goodness, to using goodness as a shield against the fundamental uncertainty of existence. Instead, he invites us into a life of absolute presence, absolute integrity, absolute responsiveness to what is. This life is not about being good or bad, right or wrong. It is about being real, being whole, being undivided. And from this wholeness emerges an authenticity of action that renders the whole question of, am I being good, irrelevant. The question becomes instead, am I seeing clearly? Am I responding to what is actually here, rather than to my ideas about what should be here? This shift from the pursuit of goodness to the cultivation of clarity is revolutionary. It frees us from the exhausting performance of virtue and opens us to the possibility of authentic action that springs not from rules or obligations, but from the natural expression of our integrated being. This is the liberation that Musashi's path offers, not freedom from ethical responsibility, but freedom from the divided self that makes genuine ethical response impossible. The warrior's way is not about becoming good according to external standards, but about becoming whole within ourselves. Because only from this wholeness can true goodness, true effectiveness, true service to life possibly emerge. If these reflections on the dangerous price of goodness have touched something deep within you, something that perhaps you've felt but haven't been able to articulate, know that it's not by accident that you've encountered these words today. This channel exists as a space where we can question the fundamental assumptions that shape our lives, not to arrive at comfortable answers, but to penetrate to the truth that lies beyond comfort. By subscribing, you're not just receiving content, you're joining a community of fellow inquirers who are willing to look beyond conventional understanding to discover what it means to live with absolute integrity. I don't offer techniques for self-improvement or strategies for becoming a better person. I offer only an invitation to question deeply, to see clearly, to move beyond the divided self that suffers under the weight of trying to be good. If this journey of inquiry calls to you, activate the bell and join us as we continue to explore the wisdom of masters like Musashi, who dared to transcend the ordinary understanding of their time. Your presence here matters, whether you subscribe or not. But if you choose to walk this path with us, each new video becomes an opportunity to penetrate further into the truth that can set us free from our own self-imposed limitations.